Hello and welcome to the Godot community. My name is Tahira Dean. I am the virtual PLC lead for high school 2D art. In today's webinar, we're going to be talking about differentiation. A good definition for differentiation in art means that an educator is providing for the individual needs of his or her students so that all students can make progress. And so this progress might look different, of course, for different students. So it's important because it does allow more student success. I think a big part of differentiation is if you look at bullet point 3, the educator is better able to get to know individual students. So a lot of times, this differentiation honestly happens naturally in the art classroom because the creative process it looks differently for a lot of different students, and everyone in art comes in at different levels, right? So I think art teachers naturally do this with different lessons. However, I feel that rapport is a big part of the differentiation process, just because getting to know the individual students, talking to them, in some of the builder activities that might happen for a lesson, maybe in the first couple weeks, teachers are better able to get to know them individually and their skill set, and just structure lessons around their different students. Another important thing about differentiation is that it promotes individual artistic voice and self-expression. And then there's individualized feedback. So for example, if I am providing students with a series of sketchbook assignments, it might be the same list for the whole class. But of course, each student is going to sketch it or create respond to the prompt or the homework assignment differently. So one important part of differentiation is looking back and seeing how the student has grown. So for the sake of that sketchbook assignment, say we're at week 7, I would look back at week 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth, just to kind of see how they've grown. Have they activated the page in week 7, whereas in week 3 they might not have, based on that feedback. But that's one kind of important thing that differentiation allows teachers to provide, is individualized feedback. So in terms of promoting individual students' artistic voice and self-expression, I feel that individualized feedback goes hand in hand with a student's ability and their efforts put forth in a project and in just artistic self-expression. So what does it look like? After reviewing standards and pacing on the Godot or in your county, you definitely want to start with the project in mind and then create a rubric of some sort, just to kind of give yourself, a starting point in terms of what you want the students to achieve. And then it will also allow you to provide some flexibility within the lesson based on your students. Then, of course, you want to think about your individual learners and what challenges you may foresee and how to assist ahead of time. A lot of times a pretest might be necessary, especially if it's in the beginning of the year and you don't necessarily know the students as good, or if it's like an Art 1 class and you're not sure exactly what kind of skill set they attained in art classes before you. But just in general, a pretest is a good thing to do just to kind of see gauge where your students are before a project. So for example, you might be able to determine, a student has had a lot of success or experience working with watercolor before doing a watercolor lesson, or maybe they have little to no experience working with a watercolor based on your pretest that you formulate. Your pretest can be written, it can be verbal, and it can be actually a mini project-based pretest as well. So whatever you see fit for the particular lesson, definitely do some sort of pretest to see where your students are. So how do art educators do it? This could be done, differentiation could be done through allowing choice of materials, and of course within reason. And this might look differently like in an Art 1 class, and it might look in like an upper level drawing and painting 1, or even an AP class. Choice of subject, so you give some parameters. So for example, if it has to be a portrait of some sort, might it be a self-portrait? And then for your advanced learners, maybe they take a little more risk in terms of, maybe they incorporate some foreshortening or something like that. Um, but you allow some flexibility within the subject. Composition is definitely a way to differentiate a lesson. Um, and of course, providing some content about ways to, create different successful compositions is definitely going to come in handy. So maybe like a worksheet or a mini lab where they experiment with rule of thirds, activating the page, leading lines, so on and so forth. Your method of instruction is going to might look different. So, maybe you do small group where you go around and provide instruction to different tables or different students, or maybe you call them to your desk. Maybe you provide a worksheet, or maybe you provide a PowerPoint that a student can kind of pace through and refer back to. And of course, one important thing that I gained during virtual learning is just recording lessons to provide to students that might be absent or might need just some kind of reinforcement of instructions, based on whatever reason. Um, and then, of course, you want to consider the skills that you want students to learn um, in a particular lesson, or even just before a lesson. And this being okay with also, allowing some flexibility during the lesson for some changes is another important thing to note. So, what I would like you to do after this webinar is go to the Godot community. If you haven't joined me already on the high school 2D art, please do so and go ahead and take a part in some of the discussions. Uh, if you could tell or share some ways that you differentiate with your particular classes, provide some lesson ideas, or just some, kind of important things that you've learned about differentiation during your teaching time and teaching experience. Thank you so much, and please do tune in for the second webinar where I share some lesson examples where I differentiate with some of my students. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sahira Dean, and I'll see you in the next webinar.